I'm here with artist Katie Baum, and today we are going to make a very neat ring using sterling silver clay. I love this.
Yes, me too, because it's simple, but it's beautiful, it's elegant, and it's very quick.
And it has a little CZ set into it too.
It does, because everybody likes a little bling and a little color.
That's right. All right, so how do we get started?
Okay, very simple. The first thing I need to do is measure the top to bottom depth of my CZ so that I can first start my bezel. I have my CZ, and then I also have a set of graduated slats. This is the same tool we use with the clay, so I'm just repurposing something I already have. The easiest thing to do is stack a couple, because each one gauges your depth. And you can see that I'm moving across the top of the stone, barely touching it, which is what I want. And this happens to be a depth of 1 millimeter blue plus 1.5 millimeter red, so I'm at 2.5 millimeters of depth here, which is what I need from this particular stone. CZs are always measured by diameter across, and there can be variation in depth, so it's worthwhile to measure each one so that one isn't either pressed too deeply or rising too high after it's been set.
That makes sense.
Then I've got my sterling silver clay. Sterling is perfect for this project because the ring as a whole is created and left flat all the way through firing, so that it can be sized to any size you need after it's already been fired, which means after it has shrunken.
So you don't have to work in the round. That's nice.
You don't have to work in the round, you don't have to seal a seam, and you don't have to worry about if you've done it exactly right and if the ring will fit later.
Nice.
You're guaranteed the ring will fit later. So I have my silver clay. I like rolling it into a ball because it removes any air pockets, but also if I had folded it, I won't have like a lamination spot. And I'm going to put my same slats down, move my stone out of the way, and then just with a simple rolling tool, I'm going to roll my clay flat.
Very good.
Now, this happens to be a 4 millimeter gemstone. So I have a 6 millimeter calibrated clay punch, and it's going to give me a perfect 6 millimeter round, exactly the depth I need. And it's okay if it's stuck in there because this part is metal. So I'm going to put it on a drying apparatus. In my case, it's just a generic mug warmer. And when it is dry and done, it will be the perfect round shape I need to set my bezel for my stone. I can then take the remainder of my sterling clay and start making my ring band while put my trash up there, while my bezel is drying. That way I always have a little something to work on and it's not just sitting waiting.
How do you measure out the clay before you begin?
To be honest with you, I don't. The way this particular project is scaled, if you are a woman wearing a ring size of anywhere between, let's say, 6 and about 12, this project and its general dimensions will work for you.
Great.
If you're a gentleman with really big, what I call man paws, you can scale it up as needed, but it's really forgiving. So at this point, I can move my slats aside, and I'm going to use a different rolling tool. This is a snake roller, because what I want is an even coil.
Okay.
The hardest part of the snake roller is actually making sure your surface doesn't jiggle, but as long as you're moving and pressing, your coil gets longer. Like I said, the hardest part is if the surface jiggles. So pardon me while I roll this, and what I'm aiming for is a tube about 3.5 inches long. A little more than 3 inches, which I can call good enough.
Okay.
The beauty of this is that it doesn't have to be absolutely exact. Now I have to protect my clay from sticking everywhere. So I've got a little bit of conditioning agent. This particular one is not petroleum-based because petroleum and metal clays don't get along, but it's also not wax-based, so it doesn't go rancid. And I'm just going to put a little on my work surface, take my coil, and this time I want my blue 1 millimeter slats. Same snake roller I just used, I'm gonna flatten. This makes it easier for me to go ahead and take my roller and then make this, oops, my roller is begging for some conditioning too, so we'll do that real quick. So I can take this and extend it widthwise so that I know I've got a wide enough triangle for the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Once that has been rolled, I'm going to take it and put it on, again, same conditioning agent, a texture. I tend to be drawn to very abstract textures, especially for a project like this where you want the star to be the gem and the silver, not necessarily a very specific design.
Right.
And I'm going to put this down. You can see I've got a little bit of crackling or what have you on the top. So I'm actually
okay.
going to put that, it's totally fine because I'm going to put it on the textured side. By then rolling it to the texture, we're actually going to go ahead and erase any of the ookies that we'd gotten on it earlier. And this time I'm going to roll to a 0.75 millimeter slat. By rolling it flat, a little thicker, and then slightly thinner on the texture, I'm guaranteeing that I have so much depth for texture without wasting the clay by squishing it.
Clever.
And then I'm also making sure that I have the structural integrity I need for the ring. It can't get too thin either. So there's little waste, and it won't possibly break on me. And this time I'm just going to roll. Go ahead and peel the clay easily off that texture, hence the conditioning. And I now have a big, broad area that I can use to trim my ring. Now, one of the variations on this ring is nice, easy, straight sides, but why have nice, easy, straight sides? Because I can't, you can't keep it too simple. It's kind of boring. So I'm actually using a wavy blade, and I'm just eyeballing. What I like to do, where did my little ruler go? What I kind of like to do is eyeball about a 1/2 inch. I should turn it so that it's inch up. So that it's about a 1/2 inch on the widest part of the triangle. So I'm just going to lay my blade down.
I've never seen the wavy blade. I think that's so neat.
It's the easiest way to get a nice, even something. Give myself an eyeball, lay my blade down.
So you're just making a long triangle.
I'm just making a long triangle. That's all I'm doing. And then when I take my extra away, bunk, 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 bunk. Whee, there we go. I have a nice, even, long triangle that becomes the body of my ring. And then this portion of the ring band just goes onto the same mug warmer or candle warmer to dry that we had our bezel on. Typically at this point, the bezel's getting pretty dry and is ready to move on. So it's nice and round and even. Because the clay shrinks a little bit, it will fall really easily out of the clay punch.
Oh, and you started with 6 millimeter too.
So I started with a 6 millimeter tool, so now I've got a little less for my 4 millimeter stone.
Okay.
And my first step at this point is to just smooth my edges. I have a little bit of a sanding sponge here. I like sanding sponges better than sanding paper because sanding paper has no cushion to it.
It's a little more forgiving.
This is far more forgiving, and some days you're just a little clumsy. Everybody has those days, I call it dropsy. All of a sudden that day, everything I touch, I fling.
I know.
So this is really helpful because if I'm having a day that I'm a little too crunchy, it helps me not break things, literally.
So how do you attach the stone to the bezel?
I actually inset it. Very simple hand tools. The first thing I'm going to do is drill a hole straight through the center of this. And I'm just going to use the tweezers to hold it in place and drill until I'm through. And you can feel when you're through, so you don't have to go, drilling into your work surface and killing it. Because that last turn, as you can see there, catches, and
so
then that's it,
all
you're
the way through.
You go all the way through, and it's a crisp, clean hole.
Okay.
Now I'm going to do virtually the same exact thing in the same exact motion, but I'm doing it with a burr setting, and you can see that the burr has the same shape as a gemstone, so I can literally drop it in, and it will be a perfect fit.
Cool.
And the hardest thing is, how deep do you have to go? Because your burr is literally in the way of what you're looking at. So you basically have this, and
so
then
you create your own seat.
You're creating your own seat, and the stone goes in. In a perfect world, that stone sits right down in there, and it's just the right depth that as the clay shrinks during firing, it grabs onto that girdle, and the stone's not moving around.
All right.
So this is done. The next step is to grab your ring base. At this point, it's dry. I'm going to use that same sanding pad very carefully. And I like a rubber block. It is a very, very simple, inexpensive tool that raises your work surface, so you can just come up on the sides. And you do that across the whole thing. You have your bezel, I have already made a little bit of paste using the same exact clay, and you can use water to make paste. There are other products on the market that you can use that make a really nice paste.
So that's how you attach it together.
That's exactly how you attach it together. I'm gonna get a little blip, drip it on, press it where I want it, and I like to set it a hint from the end, right like that.
And then I know you're gonna fire this and do all your finishing techniques, but how do you make it into the ring shape?
Well, the beauty of a sterling silver clay is sterling as a metal is much more strong than a fine silver. And
So you can hammer it.
I can hammer it.
All
I
right.
have
So
a
you got
stepped
your ring
mandrel, and it's just a ring mandrel. This is how it looks when it comes out of the kiln. To get it to be shinier,
You just polish it up.
you can polish it up. You can use a stainless steel brush. You can
Beautiful.
see immediately.
Well, let's take a look at the finished ring. There are so many different ways that you can go with this. Thanks, Katie.